ASTC.com.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan Proft here. As anybody who's been paying attention knows, Governor Jelly Belly's raison d'etre is to make Illinois the abortion capital, not just of the Midwest, but of the country. In addition to pushing abortion on demand, including after birth. That's his position. Taxpayer financed, of course. The governor also founded an own independent group to spend money on pro-abortion advocacy around the country and support candidates similarly disposed. After the Dobbs decision, when states in the Midwest around Illinois acted to make sort of reasonable restrictions that are supported by a supermajority of their state's electorate, things like notification, parental notification, restrictions on late-term abortions, those sorts of things. You know, the majority of Americans, even in a place like Illinois, don't believe that an abortion is an event to be celebrated. They believe, a majority, that abortion should be legal, but that also, to borrow from the lexicon of the left from 30 years ago, before they were fully radicalized into neo-Marxists, safe, legal, and rare. Safe, legal, and rare. But that's not the position of J.B. Pritzker. It's not the position of the Illinois political ruling class. It is the position of the Illinois electorate, interestingly. But the reasonable and the moderate on the issue get bullied and cowered by the hysterics on the left. You know, these ghastly women from the North Shore and Hinsdale and the male impersonators they're married to. You know who I'm talking about. Well, in addition to sort of the principle of the matter, in terms of where is there a consensus on abortion restrictions, because abortion on demand, the position of J.B. Pritzker is one that is shared by a very small percentage of the electorate. It nonetheless persists as the order of the day. One of the issues we've discussed on the show, but deserves more attention, because it gives lie to the idea promulgated by pro-aborts like Jelly Belly that all that pro-lifers are interested in is the prospect of the child. They don't care about the woman. And, of course, all the pregnancy resource centers that exist give lie to that. But also what gives lie to that is pro-life organizations who support ensuring that women are safe even if they do go to a Planned Parenthood or another abortion mill. We don't want what happened in Philadelphia to happen around the country. You remember Kermit Gosnell, that butcher, who's, I think, serving life in prison now. Women dying on the operating table. And so one would think, and I think here's another consensus opinion, any institution that does invasive surgical procedures should be regulated and licensed by the state. There should be oversight to ensure that these are safe environments, in this case for women. Well, you would think that. But so radical are the ideologues, the pro-abortion ideologues like Jelly Belly on this issue, that there are abortion mills in Illinois that are not safe for women, because they're not treated like every other health institution that performs invasive surgical procedures. And the latest example of that, apparently, is the ironically entitled, of course, Hope Clinic in Granite City, Illinois, which is southern Illinois, far south. The investigation has been done by the Center for Client Safety, and to provide details on what's going on at the Hope Clinic, we're pleased to be joined by Christine Smith, who's a Chief Investigative Officer at the Center for Client Safety. Christine, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
So give us the details on the Hope Clinic, what is going on there, and what we should be concerned about.
Yeah, sure. So first I'll tell you what they're trying to do, and then I'll give you a little background on the facility itself. So right now they are trying to relinquish their licensure status as an ambulatory surgery treatment center, which means they would, not be licensed that way by the health department. They would not be subject to inspections anymore, and they would not have to meet, many, many standards that are very, very typical that, abortion facilities need to meet in many other states across our country. So they're looking to do away with that licensure, operate unregulated by the health department. Currently, they are offering at their Granite City location abortions up to 27 weeks and 6 days. They also opened a new location in Chicago a couple of months ago, and they proudly offer abortion up to 34 weeks at that location. And I wonder if they plan to expand, their offering to 34 weeks in their Granite City location as well, once they become unregulated by the health department.
So 34 weeks, yep. eight and a half months.
Yes, exactly. So Illinois law, says through viability abortion is legal. However, there are very loose exceptions that they appear very, willing to use to their advantage. For example, an exception like maternal mental health and things that are kind of hard to actually pin down, offer these loopholes to offer abortion even past viability, which is already, very, very loose.
So just to put a fine point on it, the Hope Clinic in Southern Illinois, and they're catering, mm-hmm. That's on the border. They're catering to the St. Louis crowd, right? That's what that's yes. why it's there. Mm-hmm.
And not only that, if I could real quick, not only the St. Louis crowd, but they, according to the health department's own inspection in 2022, they saw up to 650 patients a month. And I believe that has only increased since it's become such a gigantic destination. There are people that see women flying in, driving in from all across the country mm-hmm. to access later-term abortions there.
And just to be clear about this, so the Illinois Department of Public Health told you that the Hope Clinic is surrendering its license mm-hmm. as a surgical facility, and mm-hmm. and so you think, so that means they're shutting? No. They're surrendering. They're surrendering their surgical license. It doesn't impact their business in any way. Being an mm-hmm. abortion mill, it just eliminates the oversight, that uncomfortable oversight they were otherwise under by holding that license.
Correct. Exactly. Right. I had people tell me, hey, we saw this about Hope Clinic. They're giving up their license. Are they closing? And I said, nope. That is definitely not what's happening. It's actually a reality worse than, exists right now. They will now just operate without that oversight, like you said. So that's what's going on.
And from your investigation into the Hope Clinic, what is their track record mm-hmm. to the extent that that's knowable?
Yeah, so just from 2022 to 2024 alone, in just those few years, there's over 24 medical emergency reports that I've received from people that are their sidewalk advocates on the ground ministering to women, and I've corroborated those reports with FOIA records. I can see 911 records there, and they've had several more emergencies in 2025 as well. And then back in December 2022, which, by the way, is the last time that they were inspected, despite actually being licensed, these last few years. In 2022, they failed an inspection. They did not follow the required emergency management protocols. So for multiple patients that had a direct transfer to the emergency room, they failed to complete the right transfer paperwork, putting all of those patients in severe risk, even more risk than they already were. And, again, that had the potential to affect over 650 patients that were seen that month.
So they were last inspected in 2022. They failed that inspection. Then between 2022 and 2024, there were more than 24 reported medical emergencies, but no follow-up on the 2022 inspection. What does the Department of Public Health have to say about that?
Well, I'm glad you asked. I recently, in preparation for the public hearing we had to, make it known that we opposed this relinquishing of licensure, I FOIA'd the health department to ask for any inspections to make sure I didn't miss any that have occurred, between that 2022 date and now. And they told me no, all they gave me was 2022. They said, that's all we have. And they said, by the way, Hope Clinic told us that they were surrendering their license in September of 2025. And I said, okay, that's interesting because the Health Facility Services and Review Board, which is the agency responsible for, going through this process of letting them relinquish their licensure, claimed that they did not have their application until the end of October. So that raises questions of, did Hope Clinic plan to try to circumvent any processes? Did they think that they could simply just tell the health department that they weren't going to be licensed anymore? And then they found out, no, you have to actually go through a process and, be subject to a public hearing like they were. The Department of Public Health did not seem to mind. They told me if I had any more questions about it, I could contact the facility itself.
Well, yeah, sure. I'm sure they'll be forthcoming.
Exactly.
What happened at the hearing on Monday?
Yeah, so on Monday, we were hit with quite a surprise blizzard there. Snow a lot earlier than we planned, so that was crazy, and I'm really glad I still got to be there and go. And so the Health Facility Services and Review Board held the hearing. We had a few minutes each to give testimony, and my focus really was just making sure that this process of the relinquishing of their licensure is done thoroughly, so we're not missing anything. And I brought all of this to the attention of the board, these medical emergencies, their field inspection, because it seems that these agencies aren't talking to each other. The Department of Health and the Facility Services and Review Board don't seem to be talking to each other. So I wanted to make sure that the Review Board had all of the information, brought that to their attention, and I called for a thorough inspection before any licensure decision is made. And not only that, but inspecting a greater number of patient records than their 2022 inspection, given those medical emergencies and stuff. So that's what I'm hoping to see, is a very thorough inspection to bring anything to light that needs to be.
So do you have any handle on how prevalent this sort of case study is in Illinois and states like Illinois that are abortion on demand, taxpayer funded states?
So do you mean like how many are operating unlicensed?
Yeah. How many are operating like Hope Clinic is, with about the same track record or worse?
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know the exact number of the facilities that are operating unlicensed. I do know that their new Chicago location also does not appear on the Ambulatory Surgical Treatment Center directory, so I believe they are unlicensed as well. And again, that's the location that's probably offering up to 34 weeks. So, that's very concerning.
And the whether they're licensed or unlicensed, that's a state by state regime, right? So in Indiana, they might be, and in Illinois they're not, for example.
Correct. Right. Yeah. So Washington State, Virginia, they're unlicensed. There's others, but and then obviously in some states they are licensed, and usually when they're licensed in the state, it's as an ambulatory treatment center. That's very common.
And is there any sort of research on the relative safety records of the licensed versus the unlicensed?
Well, I mean, you can look at examples like you referenced Gosnell in the beginning of your monologue there, and of course, there's probably more detailed studies out there. There's a really great study compiled by Americans United for Life called Unsafe. And anyone can Google that and read through that. And there's years of inspection data that's compiled there, and it goes state by state and shows a little bit of that. So I'd encourage anyone to look that up and reference it, if they're curious about some details. But essentially, when you allow a facility like this to be unregulated, you're bringing back those, quote, back alley abortions that, decades ago, people on the pro-abortion side were trying to avoid, apparently. And now we're bringing that back. And, that's just very ironic to see.
And I assume, it's unusual for women like those 24 health emergencies that happened at the Hope Clinic between 22 and 24. Women don't want to come forward for, obvious reasons of, privacy and so forth.
Yeah. Well, that's true. It usually takes women several years, sometimes even, a decade or more, to really be ready to talk about their experience. And I'll tell you another thing, because Illinois is such a destination, a lot of these women that have experienced medical emergencies may have, had that happen to them, and then they go back to their home state, wherever that may be, and it's kind of hard to get, really good data on what's going on when a lot of these people don't actually even live in Illinois.
Yeah, that's a good point. Christine Smith, Chief Investigations Officer at the Center for Client Safety. Christine, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much.
And she joined us on the Turnkey.Pro answer line.
It's like a hot, steaming cup of information to start your day. It's Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
This past year has been one of the hardest in MyPillow's history. It's because of you that they are making it through. They want to thank you for your continued support by extending their wholesale prices on classic MyPillows. Get standard classic MyPillows for only $14.98. It gets even better. Upgrade to